Welcome to the Tech Insider podcast. I'm your host, Nick Hume, founder of Hume Consulting, specializing in technology strategy and transformation, sustainable digital infrastructure, and diligence for capital market investments. Tech Insider discusses leadership, strategy, and technology trends with industry-leading executives around the world. Today, I'm joined by Oliver King-Smith, founder and CEO of SmartR AI. Oliver and team have created an AI platform called Scotty, designed to democratize access to data while keeping privacy and control front and center. Oliver shares his career and education journey from Scotland to the States and back, and how those experiences shaped the development of Scotty. In our conversation, we chat about the ever-changing world of AI deployments, discuss the challenges of handling unstructured data, the importance of data privacy and security, and the role of ethics in AI. We also explore how Scotty has been leveraged in industries such as healthcare, aerospace, and government deployments with customized air-gap solutions that prioritize security without compromising on innovation. Tune in and discover how SmartR AI and Scotty are helping organizations take their AI game to the next level. So, Oliver King-Smith, welcome to the Tech Insider podcast. It's great to have you on. Love to chat to you about what you're working on, and you're dabbling in AI and doing a bunch of work there. You're based over there in Scotland. You spent a bunch of time in the US over your career and in life, and so love to talk about everything in between there. So, welcome and great to have you.
Thanks for having me on. It's a pleasure to be here, and I can share lots of Scottish stories today with you guys.
So you're based in Edinburgh, in Scotland. So you've been there. How long have you been based in Scotland for?
Yeah, so I moved here right in the middle of COVID. It was less than optimal timing. We had two airlines go out of business, and finally the third one got us here. But at the time when we were planning on moving, no one had heard of COVID. So it's just sort of the way things happen.
Yeah. So you were born in Scotland, and then you moved to England, and then you moved to the States, and then you moved back to Scotland. Did I get that journey correct? Is that the...
Yeah, more or less. There were several moves between America and England, and then my parents finally moved to Ohio, which was a bit shocking. And we'd just studied the Midwest in school. We had good geography teaching in England, and I'm like, Ohio? I just studied that. Do I really want to move there?
Yeah.
I didn't have too much option in the matter.
Yeah, you probably knew a lot about it. Most people sort of, a kid, you move houses, you move states, you move countries. And so you're moving into a place you don't know much about. And then you're moving to a place you probably knew more about than most when they get transplanted into a different place. So that was probably something to an advantage. But it's interesting.
But I escaped and made it to California. And so, that was a big change. So that was kind of nice.
Awesome. Well, take me through that journey. Like what brought you to from Ohio to California? I think you were there at Stanford. And so tell us about, that journey there and what you studied and how you came about to get to where you are today. Maybe there's a little story there.
Well, so I actually chose Berkeley to do my PhD.
Oh, Berkeley, I'm sorry.
Well, I did also went to Stanford as well, but I did my PhD at Berkeley, and I chose it because it was right between Napa Valley and Silicon Valley, so it's sort of my two favorite valleys. And I did actually get into winemaking once I got there, which was fun. After my PhD, I went in and started working on high-end visualization and statistical software for people basically in the biomedical and medical and research organizations. And so just stayed in California after that for another 30 years, just about.
Very cool. Very cool. And so you stayed there, and you were working in doing those things you mentioned. But then, did you start? When did Scotty get born? So Scotty is this AI tool you've developed, with SmartR AI. What's the journey from California to Scotland to Scotty? Like, what's that leap? How did you make that transition?
Yeah. So. Well, when I moved to Scotland from California, I'd been working very heavily in the embedded market. I'd been working with AI in the embedded market already since about 2016, but working in that embedded market was my forte. And once I got to Scotland, middle of COVID, there wasn't much going on. So I thought, okay, well, I'll just go launch my own company. We initially focused on a product we called Alerter, which was designed to help people that may be suffering from medical issues or they may be having some aging issues. So it's a supportive, assistive technology that we developed in AI. And one of the core parts of that was the messaging system. So when ChatGPT became a household name, we thought, hey, let's just take our engines that we've been using, and we'll develop that into Scotty, and that's where Scotty came from. And Scotty's really grew out of that product, and it's all about data now with Scotty. So ingesting, cleaning, analyzing, organizing, transforming data.
Very cool. So Scotty is a software-based tool.
It is, yeah.
Deployable, for anyone, anywhere, anytime. Like what? So take maybe one step back on from Scotty. So what the problem statement for businesses that you sort of looked at was what exactly? Like they were struggling with Barrett and decentralized data. They didn't know where their things were, or they couldn't. Like, what was the theme? What was the problem statement to solve for with that product?
Yeah, so there are a number of things that big organizations have trouble with their data. A lot of it is not that accessible or sortable. So there's a huge amount, maybe 70, 80% of data that organizations have are really difficult to access and do anything with because it's unstructured. And even when you have the structured data, it's very locked up in sort of the fortress of the IT department. And it can be hard to find what you're looking for and trying to get it out. So Scotty's really been focused on that. It's like, how do we democratize access to data? And that's really the focus that we wanted to solve with Scotty. And a couple of the characteristics around that is that a lot of our clients we knew were going to be very concerned about security and privacy.
Sure.
And so we designed Scotty from the very get-go so you can deploy it on site and you don't have any outside connections or any other leaks or other problems like that. So you can really keep control of your AI engine.
Yeah. So that's you can go into. I mean, the deployability of it not needing to go to clouds means you can be in air gap solutions. You can be in for government workloads, for confidential workloads, and then how is it deployed today? Is it essentially like an LLM, an SLM that gets deployed with a bunch of other tooling to help do that inferencing? And so how does one? Because it sounds like from the outside looking in, and it's like a co-pilot type system where you can have it alongside. It's Scotty, so it's a reliable, buddy and a pal sitting next to you, kind of like a co-pilot. Is that kind of a good comparison or a competitor that you kind of compete with?
Yeah, we definitely see people using Copilot as a competitor to Scotty. We're a bit different in the fact that, first of all, Copilot is not private. Your data is getting sent
Absolutely.
off to wherever it's going at that particular point in time. And Copilot is also something you need to do a lot of customization to actually get the solution you want. Scotty's already been customized, and we provide additional customization. So customers can get up and running really quickly with it without having to know a lot about this technology or how it works or find developers that can go work with this technology. So that's really kind of a key differentiator is we can get you going really quickly with this kind of technology and deploy it on site. And we have clients that put it both on their physical servers, and we also have clients that use it in their own private clouds. So we have both kind of clients.
Interesting. And so then, like industry wise, like other clients coming from all over, like it seems like it's very applicable to really everyone. Is there one customer or user base that's more interested than others, or that you're targeting? Like, do you say, hey, oil and gas is my jam, and so we're going to target those guys, or insurance, or fintech, or other? Is there a place that it sort of optimally fits, or is it kind of an everything to everyone type solution?
Who are our biggest customers right now and where we see the most interest would be the aerospace, defense, healthcare, and governments. Those are kind of the big markets. I think that oil and gas or mining may also be interested ultimately in this technology, but thus far we haven't really seen much interest from that particular sector.
Yeah.
But certainly, anyone that has to comply with a lot of regulatory compliance and privacy is really important to them. This kind of technology really fits well into that kind of a framework.
Yeah, well, I guess that standalone, no phone home type deployment would be very lucrative, very interesting and applicable for those government workloads. I can see that happening. I worked on the Jedi program at Microsoft Azure, and so that was obviously a big part of that was having an air cap solution, and the challenge of all these Azure services that Microsoft develop are all, they all need to be not only deployed, but then maintained. And so to do that is difficult when in a public cloud, it's easy. You just, have a secure connection in and you deploy your your zeros and ones. But if you're doing that in an island, you need to go into the island to actually update and change those things. So it's kind of it's more complicated than it seems from the outside, and most people wouldn't necessarily sort of think about it. But it's incredibly complicated and challenging for the dev team to manage those things. So speaking on that line, how then, let's say that they're deployed into defense or into an aerospace manufacturer, or like, how does then that deployment get updated and changed? Because AI is obviously changing every day, changing every week, changing every different things. I think NVIDIA even today dropped a huge open source model, sort of hot off the press today on October 3. So how do you keep up with it all?
Yeah, so one of the things that we always like to do is to find that person that owns a problem inside the organization. So we're not saying, hey, here's AI, you should use it. We're going and asking, what is your problem that you would like to solve? And then we work with them to actually bring in Scotty to solve that particular problem. So once that solution's up and running, they don't need to mess with it. I mean, so yeah, maybe there's better AI out there, but do they care? If it's meeting their KPIs, they're quite happy just to stick with that particular solution. And then maybe they come back a year or two later and they'll say to us, hey, could you upgrade this? Or we want to add some new features. But as a rule, they're not trying to keep up with the very latest technology. What they're trying to do is solve a problem. And so if that problem's well solved, then you don't need to really worry about, constant updates and that kind of stuff. And, we deliver inside our own containers. So from that standpoint of view, you can be upgrading the infrastructure, your IT infrastructure, and the container will continue to run fine on that. So if you've got to patch security things in your organization, it doesn't really affect us particularly at that point in time. We're well behind the firewall.
Yeah. Okay, cool. And then thinking about, so that's on the deployment side with Scotty. So then how does one go about deploying it, maintaining it using containers? Are you using any open source models today to sort of use that? If that's IP, you don't have to say, but are you using open source large language models to help, build, fine tune, and develop this the Scotty application?
Yeah, we do. We actually use a number of models. We've even built some of our own models, although we can't build past a certain size. It gets too expensive, typically for clients. But it's actually, when you look at Scotty, it's a collection of code and large language models, well, really small language models. I guess we now call them more specialized language models that we've trained and tuned to do various things that we want to accomplish. And so with these models, we look at them as really a software component. They have capabilities and they have some drawbacks as well because they're not deterministic and they can have their own issues. But we just view them as a software module and we build out the software application with these models inside them. And I think that when people start realizing, you can use these as software components and you can start solving really interesting problems that, just were not solvable 5 years ago. There's a whole bunch of things you can now do with software that you couldn't do previously. So that's our approach to it, is to think about it as a software component, and we build from the ground up with this understanding we now have this new software component that can solve all kinds of new and interesting problems.
Oh, awesome. And thinking about how big the deployments are and like there's, customers have large data sets and the infrastructure really needs to ebb and flow relative to some of that size. So if you're a small company, your infrastructure needs are smaller and it typically goes up from there. It's not linear, but it's close to linear. With regards to the ability for the software to pull in large data sets or any data sets, let's say, what kind of infrastructure do you need? Do you need like thousands of GPUs? You need tens of GPUs? Can it run on CPUs? Oh my gosh, I'm sorry. It just runs CPUs, and like, how does that work?
Yeah, so we do have clients that actually run on CPUs for some smaller applications where we use Scotties, but the typical client would run on a smaller NVIDIA GPU. So even consumer grade, like an RTX 490. We've also got clients that run on bigger stuff than that. But because we're using relatively small models and we're not trying to do everything inside the model, but instead what we're trying to do is take the models of what they're good at and use the software for where that's good at, it really reduces down that computational footprint. So for a small client, a single server with a $1,000 graphics card is going to be more than sufficient for what they need. Bigger clients will need to scale up and look at how many users are going to be using that system simultaneously and what they want that response rate to be. But I mean, even a system with, say, 4 graphics cards in it will be more than sufficient for most people,
Yeah.
and that's very doable. And in theory, it might be better to go to a single big graphics cards, but obtainability on them is so hard that we've
Totally.
actually designed our stack so we can split it across the multiple cards. It's
Yeah,
just
yeah.
much easier to go buy.
Can you utilize CPU in lieu of not having GPUs? Can you run that on the CPU?
You can, yeah. It's slower, but I mean, I run it. I run a version of Scotty on my Mac laptop, and there we're taking advantage of some of the M silicon accelerators, but
Oh,
it runs reasonably well. I mean, it's not super fast, but it's not horribly slow.
yeah, yeah. And then, so that's, I think that's really interesting because I think enterprise AI, we you hear in the news a lot about, the really large deployments of GPUs, tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands with Elon's, XAI stuff. And, the beat up well, not the beat up, but the media likes to sort of talk about those big things and the cost and like the size and the scale, and that makes the news. What doesn't make the news is, the modest needs of the enterprise AI customers, and some of which you talked about, right? Some of those verticals, still big companies, but they have, they don't necessarily need to go and train their own models. They want to use a model somewhat off the shelf, throw their own data at it and interrogate it in a way that gives them value add. And so the challenge there is there's not many solutions in the market that offer that, other than, I guess Scotty's one of those great applications that can do it. Copilot's there, but again, it's tethered to Microsoft and it's on in their own cloud, and you kind of wedded to their ecosystem. But there's not much else out there that can really do it. I guess you got Gemini and Google, but you're kind of giving up your privacy there,
Yeah,
and probably more. But it's, I think the needs of the many are not really being met yet, and those demands are not as vocal as what you're sort of seeing, I think, in the market, or at least in the media. And I was talking about this the other day with someone, and I don't think we're just seeing the tip of that iceberg of AI and the application of it across different aspects of people's lives, people's jobs, businesses, and the applicability to industry. For life
yeah,
sciences specifically, that's a place that I really think it could be applied to in a big way. And so then, obviously, with the customers today being government and kind of more, they're coming to it from a privacy point of view. Do you see any, going back the other way, do you see any, more public, more, well, let's say less private use cases, or are you guys focusing in that area? Like what is your view on how you kind of deploy more and scale out with Scotty and the SmartR AI suite of, business products?
what we've really been looking at is, how could we reduce the amount of time we need to put in order to get a client up and running effectively with AI? And we're at the beginning of this revolution. We're not going to be done with AI in the next 5 years. We've got probably 30 or 40 years worth of evolution and revolution that's going to go on in this particular space. And one of the things we're figuring out is, well, how do we get this to go quicker? So one of the things that we've been releasing to some customers now is our new kind of data cleanup tool. We call it Schema Sense. And what it does is it actually understands your database, and you work interactively with it to actually document your database. And then once you've done that, we can then go in with the data analyst tools, and they can use all that documentation that's been created now to actually start querying without us having to do that work. Initially, we did all that work. Okay, well, let's have a look at your database. Let's see what we've got in it. Let's see if we can get it now to work with that. And instead, now is learning how to do that interactively with the customer. The customer gets some really good utility out of it because now they've got some documentation that mightn't exist, especially on legacy systems.
Sure.
And now they can get a lot more information out of it. And so we're definitely working that way. It's like, how can we make this friendly and easier for people to deploy? And it's just with any kind of new technology, you figure stuff out. Like, okay, what's important to do? I think we've been a bit in that, let's throw stuff against the wall and see what sticks for the last year.
Yep.
And now we're starting to move into, okay, we now can really see how to solve these problems. How do we go about solving them better and better? And I think that's really natural for a new technology when it comes
Mm.
out.
And yeah, no, it's a good point. I think the what we've struggled with in some adjacent businesses that I've been working in is really like how we use, do we need to use, and how do we use RAG? And so like
Yeah.
how does that factor into, the retrieval process? But then also, like you mentioned before, with structured and unstructured data, it's the unstructured data is really difficult because it's unstructured, and so you've got to train models and have them understand nuance and context and things that humans do, or humans can. Sometimes it's difficult for humans to actually work that out too. But understanding, if everything's the same and you've got like 50 documents with the same template, the same names, the same fields, it's going to make it's going to make light work of it. But if you give it 50 different documents, one's a legal document, a finance document, something else, it's going to have more trouble kind of triangulating some of those things and making the necessary kind of relationships between them. So if I had, so let's say we had a terabyte of customer data, do you care, or is there any limitation to file size, file type, unstructured versus structured sort of being put aside? If I have PDF and I've got MP4, I've got like video or text, does Scotty care? Or what things can you and can't you support today?
Yeah, so we don't do anything with video or audio really right now. That's not our forte. We may move into doing more stuff with images over the next year, but I don't think we'll probably be in video. Quite a different problem space in some ways, try solving that. But in terms of the kind of information that we take in, we get people coming in with PDFs, obviously, that's a very common use case. We also get a lot of people with very large searchable databases. So these might be databases like electronic health records. They're not really a traditional database in the fact they've got well-organized data. It can actually be incredibly chaotic, and people have even come up with their own schemas and made their own modifications to how they enter stuff into electronic health records. So they can be quite a mess, all the way through kind of traditional databases. And so it really depends on what we're looking at as to how much processing power we need. If you've got a traditional database, once we understand the structure of that database, really the processing power you need is more just running the database so we can run the queries against it. If you're looking at a lot of unstructured data, we will need more processing powers because our RAG system, which we call Super Search,
Okay.
does quite a bit of post-processing. It's not just a RAG. It does a lot in terms of it can even build out graph structures of what's really going on with the data and hook together entities in that data set so you can search it more effectively and quickly and find more information and understand how it's all hooking together. And we've got things like re-rankers and that kind of stuff inside it. So there you'll need a lot more processing power, but it will handle pretty much any kind of a reasonable document that you have with some caveats. PDFs are notoriously difficult to work with, tables, that kind of thing. I mean, even with that, our system does pretty well at this particular stage of being able to read and understand tables.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm just thinking as well. You think about a flat file system of a file share of a company, and so security groups, and you've got HR can see this, finance can see that,
Yeah.
sales can see other areas. Then you've got, I guess, password protection in some of those specific files as well.
Yeah.
Does you kind of how practically does that work in for your customers today? Like how do they navigate it? Is it essentially anything public for everyone to see is kind of the target, and then everything else is kind of the exception, and that's how you treat it?
So, I think as I mentioned earlier, we really like to look for that use case. What are they trying to solve? So it could be that a client comes to us and go, hey, we want a generalized document retrieval system, but that tends not to be the case. People come to us and say, okay, we've got this process, it's not going well in the organization, or we want to make this process work better or more efficiently, or we want to be able to do this kind of thing that we haven't been able to do before. So we ingest the material that is going to be needed for solving that particular problem. And then typically people get access to the system of the people that need to get access to the system. And so that access control is based on the fact that you as an individual should be able to see that data that's in the system. And because it's your job function to actually solve the problem that you need to solve. So, a good example would be that we have a client that's looking at a bunch of NHS data, with the National Health Service in England data, which
Sure.
is sensitive data, medical data. So the system's been set up to work so that only the people that would normally have access to that data can actually get access to the system to actually do anything with it. And so that's the way we've been handling it. And if you've got sort of a digital transformation project, like I said, where someone's trying to change the entire organization to go and search every document in it, it'd be a nightmare. I think there'll probably be some pretty embarrassing whoops that happen. When I was playing around with a very old model, this would be long before ChatGPT came out. This was an LLM. Someone had ingested all the emails, I think, from the Enron case when Enron's fraud got
Oh yeah.
discovered. There was a big case, and there was clearly an office affair going on that I found that had been lurked by the. I'm not sure anyone ever knew about it. It was buried in hundreds of, maybe tens of thousands of emails, at the very least.
Sure.
But it's like all kinds of interesting stuff turns up, and those are kind of the problems that we need to solve with these kind of models and the way that we expose them and let people use them as well.
Yeah, no, it's that's funny. It's kind of it's almost like giving your driving history to your insurance company. It's like, I wasn't speeding, Your Honor, but like, and the insurance company, like, your premium goes up. There's some good use cases for it. I think it can obviously show some of the things that you may not want it to see as well and share. That's funny. So we were talking the other day, and you were talking about your interest and I don't know if it's obsession. You tell me if it's an obsession or an interest with black leopard. What's the deal with black leopards?
I don't know quite where that started, but one of the things that I like to play is what I call AI charades. And so AI charades, you take whatever your favorite text to image translator is. So it could be Stable Diffusion or Midjourney or
Sure,
Flux or whatever your favorite one is. And then you put in a prompt and generate a picture, and then the other people have to try and guess what the prompt was based on the picture
got
that
it.
comes out. So, for some reason, I just carried on putting black leopards into all of my prompts. There's a black leopard doing this or black leopard doing that. And sometimes it's just kind of like off on the side. But it's sort of my signature. You knew that I had obviously created this image because for no apparent reason, there's now a black leopard in it. So
Yeah, I'm noticing a few more black leopards in my LinkedIn feed, so I think I have you to thank for that. Oh, that's funny. What is there anything? What other products? So SmartR AI. Obviously, Scotty is a product of that business. Are there
yeah.
other features or sort of services that SmartR AI does? Is Scotty the focus for the moment?
Scotty is a major focus. We also do consulting work in machine learning and artificial intelligence for clients, much more general work along those lines. So we do a lot of work with visual stuff. So this would be analyzing video frames, that kind of stuff. It's not in the sense that you would think of like searching video data, but we're doing very specific things like factory optimization. This one client of ours does factory optimization and material handling optimization and using security camera feed. So we do that work for them. It's not part of Scotty. It's an entirely separate product
Sure.
that they make. And we've also helped clients with some pretty technical problems of trying to push AI out to the very edge. So analyzing things like, what are you eating? Take a picture of it or take a little video of it. And what are you eating and how much of it are you eating? That kind of thing. And we've got some stuff in the educational market that we help clients with. And we've also got looking at actually a new application in the fashion market. I'm trying to look more fashionable now, just in case they actually decide to give us the contract. But it's so we also work on those kind of projects, and those things are useful because it keeps us up to date with what's going on in other areas other than just what Scotty's doing, and it gives us other insights like, okay, we could do this or we could do that as well, being able to solve these
Yeah.
other problems that clients are looking at.
Well, I think the great thing there is it's a good story when you've got Scotty in your toolkit. You're invested in those other areas, and actually you could use this, and this is something else we offer. So I'm sure that's a good segue into a Scotty engagement as well.
It is. And Scotty often leads the other way. Like
Oh,
someone gets Scotty and like, well, we'd also like to do this, but it's not related. How do we solve it? And like,
yeah,
okay, yeah, we can do that for you as well. So
yeah. Where are you seeing the interest globally? Like, is it in Europe? Is it North America, Southeast Asia? Like, where do you want it? Where do you want it to expand to, and where is it today?
So we only focus really on English-speaking countries. We feel like AI has such a high level of communication inside it that it's probably going to be better to go with a local provider. So if you're in Germany, it makes sense to go with a group that's fluent in German and knows how to deliver stuff in German, just because of that strong language element that now exists inside AI. So in the English-speaking world, North America is our number one market by a long way.
Yeah.
Our number two market is actually Australia and New Zealand right now.
Oh, represent.
Yeah. So that's actually better than the UK. We find the UK is very slow to adopt
Yeah.
right now, and we have definitely got some nibbles, some interest going on in South Africa. So there's
Really?
definitely interest going there, but I wouldn't say that we've done any deals there. But we've got a couple of people definitely sniffing around, looking at trying to do deals in South
Yeah,
Africa. So
interesting. I've seen a lot of AI interest in the Middle East as well. So more so on the digital infrastructure side. So like deploying a lot of capital and hardware.
yeah.
It's especially because it's so difficult to cool infrastructure in the Middle East. It's hot outside, and so you need liquid cooling. You need advanced techniques there. So I've been involved with and heard a lot more about some deployments there. Are you at liberty to talk about which customers, any of those things? Especially in Australia, I have an interest, but if you can't talk about it, I understand.
Yeah, we can't talk too much about our
Okay,
customers in Australia, but we do have a regional government that's using it right now and in a limited capacity over there, but I think that will expand. And we also have a trial going on with the federal government in Australia right now.
awesome.
So, but those would be two groups that have it. But we've also got some private organizations that are also using it in Australia as well.
Very cool. What about has the Scottish government, interested with a homegrown, innovative software tool? That seems like it's right. It should be up their alley. I mean, are they open to that type of thing?
That's a good question. And I probably should get out more. I'm too busy working. I should get out more and try and meet people in the Scottish government. I mean,
Yeah.
the Parliament buildings are just down the road. So, in theory, I don't have a good excuse.
Knock on doors.
That's right. You sort of go in there wearing your placards, like, Scottish AI,
Yep.
get your
Yep.
Scottish AI here kind of thing.
Oh, totally. It was a good segue selfishly for myself to talk about my Scottish heritage. Our long ancestors were sort of Scottish and Irish and English and European. And my brother went actually over to Scotland with our family tree. I don't know how many 10 years ago, and presented it to a historian. I don't know what his real the thing, why he was actually doing it in the first place. But he turned up with this family tree and presented it to this person. They're like, "Oh my gosh, you're like these descendants of the Earl of Dunbar, I think." And so the story goes, and I'll probably butcher this completely, but there was like three children. One of them passed away, one of them was lost, and then there was two boys and one girl. And so one of the boys was killed. The other one was sort of missing in action or in a war in like the 1400s or something. And then the lineage of how it went down was through the daughter. And so if you trace it all back, one of the sons was actually not lost. He went off and was essentially a prisoner of war, but then had a family. Long story short, apparently my father is the oldest living descendant of that lineage. So my brother seems to think that the Hume castle over there is his. And we have this, and it's obviously in ruins. It was taken down in a war, I don't know, in the 1600s or something. But there's all these other pieces of property and land and stuff over there, and it's a gorgeous part of the world. I haven't visited, but love to come and visit and see what we don't have rights to.
Well, it certainly is a very beautiful country, is Scotland. So I always encourage people to come visit, and Edinburgh is great to come actually spend some time in. There's a lot going on, so it's a very pretty city. Although
Yeah.
it's quite hilly, so bring good shoes. You'll be walking a lot. That'd be my
Well,
advice.
it's equally not. I mean, we're up in Seattle, so we both love the winter, in this part of the world. So I'll be familiar with that. But love to come visit. And are you over to the US anytime soon?
I don't have any scheduled trips to the US, but I'll likely be there either sometime this year or early next year would be my guess.
Yeah. Well, please, if you come by, let us know. We'd love to see you and grab a coffee or a beer or anything in between. But yeah, was there anything else anything else I missed, Oliver, in the conversation? Anything else you wanted to talk about? Anything interesting to discuss?
I'm not sure if there's a huge amount. We're always excited about AI and its applications. Oops, I'm now knocking the camera around. But yeah, no, we're always interested in talking about it, and just generally interested in if people want to talk about an idea, or can it do this, or can it do that. I'm always happy to talk. I always like to hear what people have dreamt up. Some people come up with some quite crazy ideas. I did get this one email. Someone's trying to build a faster than light spaceship and thought AI would help with it. I wasn't convinced AI was quite ready for that yet, but it was an interesting idea.
Yeah.
Don't want to discourage people, but just in general, just love talking about AI and what people want to go do with it, kind of thing.
Awesome. Yeah. So how can people engage with you and the team? Is it via your website? What's the best way to check you guys out?
Yeah, just people can go find me on LinkedIn, the Black Leopard guy, and just send me a message. It's easy to find my email up. I publish a lot of articles, so we do a lot of basically position pieces about AI, both the good, the bad, the ugly. We want people to understand what they're getting into. We don't want people to be surprised when they get going, and that the genuine problems and concerns that are legitimate, that people should be concerned about in deploying AI. So we spend a lot of time talking about ethics, and especially around medicine and that kind of stuff in AI, but also politics and that kind of stuff where AI potentially is going to play an important role. We've already seen some of that with Cambridge Analytica and other companies like that obviously trying to influence elections and bias things. And so I think it's important that people understand how this technology might be getting used to influence society as well.
Yeah, totally. We got an election next month here in the US, so I can only imagine the uptick of usage of those tools, and spreading different information, and all that stuff. It's a little scary, but also it's interesting from one point of view, but it's also kind of worrisome from another. But yeah, we'll see how that plays out. But Neil on your team actually is quite prevalent on LinkedIn there too, so he's posts quite a bit, and
he does.
Yeah. He's a bit of a LinkedIn content fiend, so he's
he
out there
is.
publishing the good, speaking the good speak.
And we have Selene, who does a lot of blog writing. She's actually a lawyer, but really interested in AI and ethics, and I think would like to pursue a career at organizational level, dealing with those kind of issues.
Yeah.
And so, I think it's going to be an important thing. It's not something that you can ignore. AI is going to change the way the world operates, and we need to think about what is that rule structure that makes sense, where you don't want to constrain AI, but at the same time, you don't want it to just completely run wild and cause mayhem in society as well. And so it's going to be very difficult to balance that, because AI is moving so quickly. Yeah. And a lot of time, these laws are getting passed by people that are perhaps not the best briefed, and perhaps they're not the most knowledgeable about what this technology is as well. So there's this tension that exists where you've got to try figuring out, how we're going to get reasonable regulation passed.
Yeah.
What does that look like?
Yeah, that education process is forever. It's ongoing, right? Like it's never done. And that happens in any business, let alone, elected officials and governments globally that, are typically not, technically, trained or have that experience. And so, but then you need good people giving them good advice for that policy and steering in the right direction. Otherwise, it's, garbage in, garbage out, essentially. If you're giving bad advice, you'll make bad decisions. It goes with AI too. You garbage in and you'll get garbage out. If your documents are all incorrect and wrong and inaccurate, you're going to get bad at analytics on the other side. So, yeah. Well, great. Oliver, lovely talking to you. It's a pleasure. Please feel free. We'd love to have you back again and see how Scotty's going over into next year. And if you get to the US, we'd love to catch up in person and all the team. So, yeah, thanks for being on the show, and thanks for having the chat today.
All right. It was really nice talking with you as well, Nick.
Awesome. Thanks, Oliver.
All right. Bye.